Hello, everyone. My name is LBK, and this is King Pair Podcast. Yeah, so first of all, let me give you some details. Actually, not really scores. Australia India series is tied at 1 all, while Indian women lost to England 2-1. They England won the first T20, and India came back, winning the second one by 8 wickets, while England won the third T20 again by 7 wickets. It seemed like there was a progression there. 9-8-7. Also in England versus Pakistan, we are already into the third game. 2 games down, England won the first game by 6 wickets at Karachi. The second game again at Karachi. Pakistan won the third game, beg your pardon, the second game by 10 wickets. And I think we can start off with that because it is kind of a polarizing game for me actually, because obviously Pakistan has won that game, in a dominant fashion. But as we are seeing, the question still remains that what is going to happen with the middle order. I mean, it is one of those games that uh, as you say, that you do not read a lot into individual games, but I think it is one of those games where you read into it kind of a little bit, due to the fact that the middle order again did not get a chance to bat in in kind of a tough chase, but when they are getting it now, they're kind of faltering.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. Pakistan's biggest problem is that middle order. I feel reasonably confident in every other aspect of the team. The openers are great, as we know. Babar and Rizwan. The fast bowling stocks are great. Sometimes inconsistent, but for the most part, I trust them. The spinners are fine. They're not the best in the world, but they're more than passable at what they do, and sometimes capable of doing great. Even the lower order isn't that bad. It's not quite England bat deep. It's not quite Australia women bat deep, but it's reasonable. But it's just a gaping hole in the middle order, and fast running out of time to fix that. And we saw that in the first game. That's sort of where the game fell apart. Was when the middle order came into bat and everything just sort of came to a crawl. And in the second game, while it was a fantastic win, no doubt about that. It was I think it's the highest 10 wicket, the highest chase to win by 10 wickets in T20s.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think the previous was New Zealand's with 171 or
yeah,
something.
that was against Pakistan. I remember that game. Uh, yeah, it was a ridiculous chase. It's good that Babar and Rizwan are back in good T20 batting form. But it's also a win that taught us absolutely nothing because we know that Babar and Rizwan are good. We know that the Pakistani bowling is generally fine, but sometimes it has bad games. We know all this. The one thing we don't know is if the middle order can do anything, and this is a game that the middle order didn't even get to play.
Also, on a similar note, I think Pakistan are kind of shooting themselves in the foot whenever they are not batting first. I mean, obviously, as we have established that Pakistan is a good chasing side. I mean, we saw that in the last game itself. But I mean, if you're not going to bat first and give this middle order a chance, then I guess you are missing probably the biggest point of this series.
I don't think that really depends on if they were batting first or not. Like, if we bowled England out for 100 and the middle order didn't get to bat like that, fine. But this was a chase that went down to the 20th over. Whether we batted first or second, uh, it didn't really make that much of a difference. The problem here was just that the top two batted so well that there's no room for the middle order to even come in and play.
There's also the point around, as we saw in that uh, Super 4 game against India, Nawaz came up to bat at 4, and he did well, but seems like, flinging up surprise, once in a while works well, but you ultimately you have to have, your solid 3, 4, 5, which I think Pakistan is still missing, and seems like they are happy going the way they are because we have not seen anything concrete on their side from what I can see.
Yeah, pretty much.
And similarly, on the other note, I think the bowling from Pakistan side, I think it has been fine. I mean, as I think we have talked about it already, that even though they lost the first game, I think bowlers did well to get the game as deep as they could, because the target was not that much. And I think they have gotten back-to-back flatties, and still, let's see. Let's face it. You are not going to see, pace masterclass every game. I mean, Haris Rauf, obviously, he'll be playing as the second pacer in the World Cup. Maybe Shahin Shah Afridi will be the first one. So I think it is fine that these guys who probably won't get a chance are at least getting a shot at someone like England here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we're not gonna get that many chances to play uh top quality teams. With this sort of consistency, we get 7 games in a row against England, which is quite good for practice. And just taking this chance to try out different players, different combinations. We just gotta take that.
And also the thing, with all these pacers that we are seeing, Haris Rauf is someone who's doing well, but others, Naseem Shah, Dahani, all are kind of struggling a bit here and there. And I think this is the kind of series that, I mean, you shouldn't be minding giving them consistent chances. I mean, Naseem Shah was struggling a bit, as we saw in the first game, but I wouldn't have minded if he played, back-to-back games as well, because it's not like he has been, consistently the part of team, so he's not exactly having a tough schedule or something. I thought he should have been given the chance, I mean, in these games as well. Do you think so?
Yeah, we're playing 7 games over the course of a week and a half. I think it's fine if players miss out on one game in the middle. Nassim had a poor game in the first T20. And, the way he bowls, very quick, very energy intensive. It's okay to take him out of the firing line for one game and then bring him back afterwards. It's not like he's been jettisoned entirely. It's just, rest and rotation. Again, like these are games where it's just about trying out players, trying out combinations. So it's okay if they're missing a game or two in the middle. We don't want anyone getting injured here.
Yeah, that is true. Moving on to the India versus England series, and actually that series kind of brought up a weird question, especially that first T20. I mean, India had some issues with the whole wet outfield situation, and we actually saw some slight mishaps in the field, and obviously there was some concerns around maybe fielders getting injured or you know having issues while fielding. So what is your outlook on something like that? I mean, obviously there's a decent risk at playing a game in the wet outfield, but then there's the whole situation where maybe the organizer or even the home board wants to go through with the game, obviously because they don't want to financially go out with that one. So what do you think is the ideal scenario or ideal solution for such situations?
Like at this point, you just trust the umpires to do their job. It's their responsibility to look at, assess the state of the pitch, assess the conditions, and if it's safe to play, they're supposed to start play, and if it's not, you don't go on the field. So like at that point, like all you can really do is just trust the umpires to do their job.
Mhm. Oh, I mean, I just want to bring it up in a sense where obviously there's every time there's a thing with two parties involved, there would always be some kind of agreement or disagreement. I think this is kind of a situation where you're stuck in a bit of a gray area, to say the least, because I mean, umpires can obviously make their decision, and that would be final. And it's not like someone is going to oppose the ultimate decision. But I mean, obviously, the teams can have their own say, right? That is what I'm what does a team do in such situation, because in case they do not want to play, do you think there should be an maybe an allowance or maybe a chance for them to play? in some or the other, because there can always be some kind of disagreement,
Like there is a line of communication between the umpires and the captains and the backroom staff. Like that's about it really. It's like it is it's the domain of the umpires and of the match referee about the playing conditions. If the players don't want to play, well, there isn't that much they can really do. Uh, yeah, like there just isn't much that can really be done about that because it's not their call. They can express their opinions all they like, but they're not the ones in control.
And obviously we have talked about the pitch part of it, but the games themselves, I think, were pretty nice. I mean, uh, generally talking about the women's cricket itself, as we have talked about it, that from the last few years, the game has been evolving at a really quick pace, and that probably applies more to the T20 because it had already, gotten to a much higher level even before the ODIs, women ODIs, started evolving. And seems like these games were also kind of similar. I mean, as I said, there was some issues around the fielding, but India were not, uh, you know, they were not at their best either in the first game. I mean, they did not bat well either. And I think from the second game, you could see that there was a more of a, an equal competition, to say the least. I mean, England, even though they lost, we saw, young players from the 100 like Freya Camp coming to the fore. Even Sarah Glenn, who is relatively new, she's now the second ranked bowler in the T20I rankings. So how do you see, these new, this whole evolution in the T20s, in the women T20s?
Yeah, it's just a constantly evolving game. We've seen that recently with stuff like Fair Break, with the last World Cup, with this upcoming World Cup, even with the Commonwealth Games. The game is always changing. The way the teams approach it is always going to be changing. And England, especially now, they've injected a lot of youth into their team. You might see a major change in how they approach T20 cricket. And that'll be interesting to see over the next few years. With the World Cup in mind, it probably won't change that drastically so quickly. But after the World Cup is over and teams are more open to evolution, well, it'll definitely be something to keep an eye on with the next one after that.
And that now that we are talking about England, always going to be a little much of a talk about Sophia Custon. I mean, she is probably one of the best spinners in the game, other gender. And the best thing about her is that it is very simple with her. I mean, she's not the biggest turner of the ball. It is really simple, just good lines, good lengths, and I think she's probably one of the smartest bowlers, if this generation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one to keep an eye on. She's definitely one to keep an eye on, and it'll be interesting to see how she evolves her game as she goes on.
Now that we have talked about the bowlers, you see, England obviously had Sarah Glenn, they had Sophia Eccleston, but something, that women's cricket maybe is still working on, you can say, or still trying to find the left arm pacers. So, and we saw Freya Kemp come to the fore in this series, even though she did not do a lot, but we saw a little bit of her. How do you see, with the different, different pace and different general evolution of the game? How do you see the left arm pacers evolve in women's game?
And especially because at the lower levels, it's quite rare. So when you get a left arm pacer at a higher level, that immediately gives them a small advantage, at the very least, over right arm pacers. Just that unfamiliarity most of the people playing will have with them. And yeah, like as the women's game becomes more professional, as you widen your net of possible players, you're going to start seeing more left arm pacers come in, more elite left arm pacers come in at the highest level, and that'll definitely make more of a difference.
And it is pretty tough thing in general as well. I mean, women's cricket has always kind of struggled, in general, to find anyone left-handed. I mean, there's obviously probably a decent crop of left-arm spinners right now. There's Radha Yadav as well. There's Jess Johnson. There's obviously Sophie Eccleston. Even Chloe Tran does well. But in general, generally speaking, even if you talk about pacers or even batters, there's not a lot of left-handers in women's cricket. I think England has not had a left-handed bat in their women's team for a while. So how do you see the whole thing about variety? Because seems like England and even South Africa suffer a lot from it. I mean, they have almost non-existent left-handed cricketers in general. They, I think the only one that bats left-handed for South Africa right now is Lara Goodall, and the only one I think they have Chloe Tran who bowls left-arm pace, and similarly even for England, I think there's only Eve Jones and Freya Camp who bat left-handed. So seems like the left-handed stocks are really low in the women's cricket right now.
It's just the nature of women's cricket is right now. It's very, it's getting better, but it's still a very restricted environment. It's not reaching, doesn't have the same broad appeal in terms of the players they're recruiting as the men's game does right now. The men's game was like this for quite a while as well. It's only started to change more recently because they are picking from a wider net instead of the same very closed off system. So as the women's game becomes more mainstream, as more women pick up the sport, you'll start to get more towards you'll get more left-handed players as you go on, as the game expands, because just widening your player pool will result in you having a greater variety of players, and that's when you'll start to get more different types of players. It's just something that'll happen as the game continues to grow. It's not really. I don't think it's that big of a concern at the moment, right? It's not like if you're a left-handed player and you go to a cricket academy, you get kicked out. It's just that there aren't that many, left-handed kids coming to these places right now, and hopefully that changes in the future.
It is funny, isn't it? I mean, we see the women's 100, and even there you won't find a lot of left-handed players. I mean, Southern Brave has a few of them, and I mean, it is pretty much that teams like Trent Rocket or Manchester Original do not have left-handed bats at all. I think there's hardly a few spinners. I think there's Smith who bowls left-handed, but I think it probably comes off kind of a general thing, I guess. I mean, from what I've observed, there's not a lot of women that do things left-handed in general, I guess, or is it?
It's the nature of where these players are coming from, right? Most women cricketers come from more middle class backgrounds, more regimented lifestyles. They come from cricket academies, cricket clubs, and those are the type of environments that tend to produce more. I don't want to say like cookie cutter because it sounds negative, but like there's less
Standard.
variety. Yeah, standardized players. There's less variety in who you'll get because they all sort of come from the same sort of background. And like at the moment, that background favors right-handed players, not necessarily because not no, there's not like some genetic thing or whatever. Only right-handers are good at cricket. It's just that like in my experience, right back home, lifestyle is generally you do everything with your right hand. Even if you're left-handed, you have to learn how to use your right hand. You just get brought up using your right-handed, doing things right-handed, even if you're stronger with your left hand. And I feel like that's the sort of crowd that cricket is attracting, like among players, among playing staff. That's the sort of crowd that gets attracted to play cricket. It's the ones where like they have the time to care about what sort of handedness you use instead of different backgrounds of players where they have bigger things to worry about than if you're using your right hand or your left hand to throw a ball. So no, again, like I feel like it's a problem that'll not even a problem. It's a numbers thing that'll go away as you get more people playing cricket, more people playing cricket at a higher level. Then you'll start to see more different varieties of players.
Bring up a really good point here that it is a whole number thing. I mean, even if you delve into the men's game, there's very limited amount of left arm pacers, especially, which is kind of a rare breed, and that kind of puts the whole game into a situation where there's academies where there'd be coaches, but if you do not have anyone bowling left arm pace, then you know if, I beg your pardon, teaching left arm pace, then even if there's kids turning out who bowl left arm pace, there's a good chance that they would not be learning, or maybe switching to another skill. Maybe someone who wants to turn up as a left arm pacer maybe switches to batting left-handed, or maybe even some have switched to from left-handed to right-handed batting. Someone like Michael Clark has done the same. So I think the whole lack of being people being left-handed has kind of affected the game in this situation.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, it's a domino effect as well, right? If you have people at the highest level playing like that, then you start to get people copying them. So you mentioned Michael Clark switching left hand to right handed. I remember a story about Michael Hussey, where his hero was
Yeah,
Alan
Michael Hussey
Border.
is
So
yeah,
even
Michael Hussey
though
is exactly opposite of that.
yeah, so even though Hussey was right handed, he batted left handed because he wanted to bat like Alan Border. So if you're left handed and you see someone batting or bowling left handed, if you're a kid like that, you'll get inspired and try to emulate them. And especially in women's cricket, there just isn't that sort of role model yet. And even if there was, it would take 5, 10 years for that change to start to be felt. I just feel like it's something that'll change with time, and it's not really that big of a deal right now. That sort of player doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It'll get
And
there.
now that we have talked about people switching, a similar case is Priti Manna, who was actually a right-handed bat, but she switched to batting left-handed when she was like 3 or 4 years old, because that's how her dad taught her to bat. So these kind of scenarios can also only develop when there's parents who are willing to teach their kids, because as she has told that it was her dad who taught her to bat initially. It was not she did not go to an academy early on. It was much later when she had developed her batting. So maybe this is also something that will come up, because as I said, Michael Clark's case was exactly opposite of Smriti Manna, because he saw his dad play right-handed and he switched to playing right-handed. While for Smriti Manna, she saw her dad playing left-handed, so she switched it that way, because that's how she found it easy to emulate his her dad's style. So I guess that is one thing as well.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. And do you want to talk about the ODI series as well, Indian women versus England? Because there's something important we have to talk here.
Yeah, you were very excited to talk about this, so take it away.
Okay, so actually, I was going to mix it up with the Pakistan game only, because there's something common here. You know, Obviously, Harleen, she looked a bit shaky in the first game, but in the second game, she scored 58 of 72. Babar Azam looked shaky in the first game, but he scored 100 in the second game. And Harmanpreet Kaur didn't look that shaky in the first game, but she's obviously played one of the best innings in the second game. So I'm guessing the second game was good for people from Punjab.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, the best thing about the whole innings was that it was not exactly a freak knock. I mean, people talk about that 171 from 2017 World Cup semi-final, but from the progression of that innings, and if you compare that progression to the progression of this innings, you can actually see that this was more well paced than that was. I mean, during that 171, you can actually see, that she is in complete control, and this is one of those days. But during the 143, it felt like she built it really well. I mean, it took her time. She got to her 50 in what, 67 or 65 balls, and then slowly paced it up. While during the 171, she actually got to her 190 balls only, and then just went further up. So that kind of makes me happy, because we have not seen the women from subcontinent pace their innings really well. I mean, we have someone like Smriti Mandana or Jamari Atapattu, who actually like to play fast, but that is the case with them. They either play really fast or they get stuck sometimes. But seems like this innings can be a paradigm shift for that, because it might finally, give the women an idea of how to pace their innings, like the women from England or Australia do.
Yeah, I don't think it's not like an English thing or an Australian thing. It's just something that comes with experience, and there hasn't really been uh, a chance for a lot of women's players from the subcontinent to get that experience so far. But yeah, like Smriti's been doing this for it's been 5 years since that 171. She's been around the block for a while. Sorry, not Smriti,
9 years.
Harmanpreet Kaur. She's been around the
Harmanpreet.
block for a while. It's been 5 years since that 171, and like eventually they'll reach that point where they're just more used to playing these kinds of innings. It's since 2017, the women's game has changed a lot since 2017. There's been a much greater focus on T20s and more T20 leagues showing up, and ODI cricket sort of taken a back seat to T20 cricket, and I feel like that might be one of the factors because I think India's probably played a lot more T20 cricket than one day cricket in that time, and also English and Australian players they do get to play a couple tests here and there, while Indian players play way fewer. And yeah, like I don't think it's you're talking about like Harmanpreet pacing or knocks as a seminal moment for Indian cricket as a whole. I don't think having a player do it is the inspiring thing. I think it's just getting into positions where you can do it and playing more one day cricket, playing more multi day cricket that allows you to get into these positions where you're able to try it and actually be able to do it.
Obviously, as you said, these kind of things take practice, and this has been that kind of year. I mean, obviously, there has been the 50 over World Cup in women's 50 over World Cup. Even outside of that, India has played New Zealand in ODIs. They've played Sri Lanka in ODIs. Now they've played England, and obviously, on a similar note, they have played T20s against the same teams. And there's Commonwealth Games. There'll be players playing in the 100, the big bash as well. So seems like as you said, it takes time, and looks like the things are coming together in both senses. I mean, there's performance on the ground and opportunities on the outside, I guess.
Yeah, it's just the most important thing for being able to get better at cricket is to play more cricket. And yeah, if you want your players to get better, we talk about this every time women's cricket comes up. If you just get your players to play more uh, 50 over cricket, then they'll get better at 50 over cricket. If you want them to get better at whatever other cricket, you get them to play more whatever other cricket.
I mean, the best example of this could be the Afghanistan team, because it is like a time where their players have played so much T20 cricket that they have become really good at it. I mean, obviously they have done decently well in ODIs as well, but seems like as you said, you keep playing it, you will get better at it, and it is that kind of progression. That you keep you know as the key. As you keep playing consistently, there's obviously going to be improvements in general. So seems like that is happening with women cricket as well. I mean, uh, in the whole post-COVID time, we have seen almost every month there's some kind of women create action, and seems like that is helping the evolution of the game. The India Australia series is up to, obviously, two games are done. Australia won the first one, India won the second by 6 wickets. But the those two games, those games have kind of seemed hollow to me, especially from the point of view that the pitches are flat and it is basically just who bats or fields better. So, as you said previously, that you do not like to read too much into these things. It seems like if these kinds of pitches continue to be served, then I guess there won't be much of a point in either of the series. Even the Pakistan series would kind of be moot if these are the kind of pitches that you are getting consistently, because it is not really helping either the case of the bowlers or batters, I guess.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit about the effect flat pitches have on bowlers. We tend to think of like if you have a flat pitch, then that sort of makes the bowlers redundant, but it's not necessarily always the case because if you have a flat pitch, then having one bowler do really well ends up making even more of a difference than it would normally. Because if you have one bowler on a pitch that's where the run rate is 13 and over, 12 and over, you have one bowler going at 8 and over, and that makes a huge difference for limiting the score a little bit. So it's not that flat pitches take bowlers out of the equations, but it challenges bowlers to do something a little bit different.
Now that you have brought up this point, I mean, this is actually, in my opinion, a case of even if there's runs on the pitch, you, I mean, you have to see to what end the pitch is actually flat. I mean, if we can go back to that India versus England series in July, in the first two games, India scored what 198 and 170 in the first innings. But it seemed like even though India had scored big in the power play and even in the middle overs, seemed like there was uh, enough in the pitch for the bowlers. So I think that is the kind of pitch where you can probably judge a bowler much more than these kind of pitches, because obviously it has kind of become a bit of a shootout here, I guess, and which is kind of not sitting well with me.
I mean, yeah, like if every pitch is like this, then it's sort of redundant. But I imagine we will get more different kinds of pitches. Maybe not in this. Maybe in these series, maybe at the World Cup or whatever. But yeah, like I say this every single time. You make the game better by having a variety of pitches rather than sticking to one form of track. Like when we get these high scoring games, we always get a bunch of, oh, cricket was better in the old days when 120 or whatever was a defendable score, even though that's never really been true. But yeah, like I don't have a problem with these pitches in isolation. I have a problem if they were the only type of pitches doled out. The same, I'd have a problem if pitches where 50 was a defendable score was the only type of pitches doled out. I like them in moderation. I like them in terms of variety. But I think cricket's greatest strength is that variety in the types of games you can get. And I think it would be a poor sport for it if we tried to homogenize the types of pitches we play on too much.
Yeah, and it especially kind of does not bode well in India, where now just focusing on this, if you focus solely on these two series, India versus Australia and India versus South Africa, the matches are supposed to be played in different parts of India, and India is a decently big country. I mean, the north is different. North is substantially different from west or even south, and that is kind of something that that would bug someone who wants to, as you said, enjoy the game rather than just you know have bowlers turning into bowling machine. So I guess obviously the World Cup pitches would be prepared by ICC, so maybe we'll see much more variety. As you said, there could be a much better competition between bat and ball, as we even saw in the 2019 50 over World Cup. But ultimately, that is that, because the boards want the pitches to be flatter, because that would be more entertaining for them. And then I guess that is what India and Pakistan are doing right now, because that seems to be the case. I think Pakistan kind of shortened the boundaries as well for the Karachi, or was it just a rumor?
Uh, I don't think they're that much shorter, but it's your word spreads quite quickly.
Yeah, okay, so that might be false. Yeah, so I mean that is the case, as we saw in that Mohali game as well. I mean the pitch was flat, the boundaries were small, and outfield was obviously quick. I mean this game can at least be forgiven because it is obviously an 8 over game, and batters were going to come swinging. But if the games are going to be like the previous game between England and Pakistan, and the Mohali game between India and Australia, then I guess you're kind of cutting off, the general competition of the game.